You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shoulder, Untold Stories from a Forgotten War, a product of Grumpy Combat Media and Friends. I almost got it all out. At Shoulder to Shoulder, we share personal stories about the ways in which war affects us. Man, that felt pretty good. All right.
You nailed that.
How's it going, Kate? How are you?
I'm great.
Yeah?
I'm really excited. I'm really excited about today's guest.
I am too.
Because I just started taking a peek at some of the materials that he had sent us.
He's
like
prolific.
His book stuff. Yep.
And I kind of copy-pasted, to be honest with you.
That's okay.
What happened was, right, when I did it, and I went back and I read it, it says, like, we need just a brief introduction. It's like, oh, the moly, that was like a whole lot. I sent it.
I loved it. Now
I
feel prepared. Yeah.
Let me give you a little introduction about our guest, Nasirullah John Safi. Grew up in Afghanistan under the Taliban brutal regime. Despite the widespread closure of schools due to extremism, Safi was determined to pursue education from a young age. Alternating between madrasas and homeschooling, he was driven by the dream of becoming a medical doctor, a decision influenced by his mother's chronic illness and his desire to help her. However, madrasas did not align with his professional aspirations. The onset of the U.S.-led coalition's war on terrorism in 2001 marked a significant turning point, bringing great changes in the lives of countless Afghans. Safi was one of them. He joined and served as a U.S. military combat interpreter, everybody, at the age of 15, showcasing multilingual skills and authorship, and played a pivotal role in supporting the war on terror in Afghanistan. His dedication came at a high cost, including being shot at and nearly losing his life on several occasions. My brother was shot in the right arm while supporting the U.S. military during a perilous mission in eastern Afghanistan. The scar on his right arm serves as a daily reminder of his experience in the Afghan war. Bro, it is an honor to have you on here. It really is, man. I'm so happy to get to talk to you and get to learn from you.
Well, it is an honor for me to be here. And when I heard from you guys, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to join you guys and talk about Afghanistan. And quite honestly, I really appreciate everything you guys been doing for Afghans. As you just mentioned, it's a forgotten war. And but when it talks about it, there have been a lot of people that still talk about Afghanistan, but you two dedicated a huge amount of time and energy and effort to talk about Afghanistan, and I really do appreciate it. And you asked me like if I know much about you. Well, not a whole lot, but I do follow you. I mean, I love your writing, and I just kind of like, this is beautiful writing. He's a handsome guy, but his writing.
Everybody, look, John, I think I need you to be my public relations guy. All right, I love it.
I can see your head getting bigger. No, I see your head getting bigger on the screen.
Oh, come on!
It's scaring me.
Oh man. Well, hey, brother, let's just kick it off. I mean, you've written 3 books, but let's just tell us about your experience. Like, how did you become a combat interpreter at the age of 15?
Well, that is a long story, and
we got an hour.
I do promise that I will send you some signed copies because I did write about them in detail. I really wanted to be an interpreter. I couldn't speak very good English. And where I grew up, I mentioned in my books, it was a very extremist community. The whole town was ruled by extremists rather than by the government. So you couldn't talk about English. That was a devil language. That was a hell language. And you could get in trouble if you ever didn't talk about English. And it was kind of hard to find some people. I was a country boy. I was, it was a tiny village deep in the Hindukush Mountains. I did not know much about the rest of the world. That was my everything. But long story short, I was able to find a guy who was not agreed at the very beginning because he was scared for his life and his family as well. He could have get in trouble. He could have get killed just because, if you could have speak a little bit English, the Taliban or other insurgents would label you as a spies for the Americans. And they have done it to so many innocent men and women in my village. I will give you an example. There was a whole family brutally murdered just because they were labeled spies for the Americans, but they were not. In fact, they were just teachers and farmers. So I started taking some English classes with this guy. We agreed after, back and forth, like trip back and forth to his house and sending my family, my brother to speak with him. And so we did. He was a farmer. He worked with the Mujahideen back in the 80s and with some American advisors fighting the Russians. And that's how he picked up English. And he wasn't very, very good at it, but he could read and write and he could read off of books. So I took some classes with him, but still my English was not good enough. All of a sudden,
it's a hard language, bro.
It was more harder because I couldn't go to school for English. There was no English course or any academy or institute that I could join. So, but in 2007, I was like taking classes with this gentleman, and I took classes for about 5 to 6 months. And in 2007, and a horrible event happened to one of the families, like I just mentioned before. They were brutally murdered by the Taliban, and that the word got out that they were spies for the Americans. And one of the kiddos who died, who was brutally killed, he was my friend. Who were going to school together. And that was the day that we stopped, everybody, like I stopped taking English classes because I was scared for my life, for my family as well, and for my teachers. So we ended up going to Jalalabad. We moved to Jalalabad. When we moved to Jalalabad, there were more opportunities, but life was difficult.
Jalalabad is in eastern Afghanistan along the Pakistan border for some of my listeners. Go ahead, brother.
Life was extremely difficult for us. We were a country family. Totally different. Like you moving into a big city, you have to deal with a lot. Like you have to pay bills, you have to pay like utility bills, rents, and everything else. And we're not used to city lives. That was a struggle for a while. I started going to school, taking some English classes, working with my brother. He ran a coffee shop. It was not a coffee shop, but we called it Samovar. It's kind of equivalent to coffee shop. So I was working with him in the afternoon, taking some English classes. And then just one day, I decided to become an interpreter. I ended up going to Fenty or Jabat.
Forward operating base. That's what FOB means for my listeners. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So when I ended up going there, I did not know that I had to be 18 to be an interpreter, or you have to be 18 to work for America. So it's because we don't have such rules. We probably did have such rules back in Afghanistan, but nobody really followed. Nobody really give a shit about it.
Yeah, labor laws aren't very strictly enforced during my time that I saw in Afghanistan. Yeah,
no, not at all. So when I got there, I was so happy I could speak a little bit better English, and I said, I'm going to be an interpreter. Make some money, support my family, support my country as well. But I did not know that I had to be 18. I was like barely 13, 14, like around there. But when I got there, they said, no way. I mean, they even laughed at me. They had their own interpreter from the state, and there was a company called Mission Essential Personnel hiring people or interpreters to work for the military. So I didn't get it. I was very disappointed, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at the image of this like very sincere 13-year-old boy going in there and like talking to the military or whoever, and then being like, what are you doing here, little kid? You know what I mean? It's just such a difference from what we would experience here. It's so cute though.
That's exactly what happened. I was like, I remember it. Like I remember as it happened yesterday. That's exactly what happened. And I was very disappointed, when I was a little kid, I was disappointed. I wouldn't exaggerate if I say I cried just because I wanted to be an interpreter.
Fair.
And it couldn't happen, just like you take so it didn't happen. I went back home, but my mom and nobody knew that I went to forward operating base Fenty to become an interpreter. Nobody in the family knew, just because I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go to university. That's what everybody wanted for me. That's what my parents wanted it for me and for my siblings as well. So I waited for a couple of months, and I did, and I went back. I tried again, but with a different birth certificate. This is like a true story. And
you got to get creative sometimes.
Yeah, brother. Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do to survive.
Yeah, just for the record, I just wanted to make sure that our audience understand that birth certificates.
Mhm.
So we don't have any digital record in our country.
Right.
And birth certificates, unlike here in the United States, you know, you have to have a birth certificate or you have to have like identification card or IDs. In our country, anybody can make it. It's just a piece of paper, or the old tazkiras, what we call it, tazkiras. So everybody can make it, sign it, or stamp it, and put whatever age do you want it. And also it's funny that
All
to
true.
walk into an office, like even if you wanted to get one from the government, there was no digital record, there was nothing, right? So you would have walked into an office and says, I need a tazkira or a birth certificate or ID.
Right.
They would just look at you and say like, well, you look like 25 or look like 20. So let's put 20. What happened to everybody? I don't know if you guys ever noticed that a lot of Afghans are born in January 1st.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Or yes, I've noticed it. Yes.
Yeah. So that's just not a coincidence. And I will tell you, because mine is not January 1st. And I will tell you why it's not January 1st, because everyone else was January 1st. And when I started working for the Americans, they clearly asked me, like, do you want January 1st or do you want a different date? I said, I want a different one. Because everyone,
I want to stand out.
Look,
yeah.
Everybody's got January 1st. I would like to have, I don't know, March 1st. How about that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
March 3rd, you're pretty close. It's March 3rd. And the reason
March 22nd, bro. That's where my birthday is. Everybody who wants to send me a present, you go right ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, mine is January 16, y'all.
Wow.
Oh,
Nice.
well,
Just putting that out there for the audience.
You know, the funny thing about like March 3rd, and the reason it says like, you know, March 3rd is quite easy. You're not going to forget it because it's 3-3. I said, let's go with that.
Smart.
I'm not choosing like 1-1 because everyone else is 1-1. So let's stick with March
smart.
3rd.
I love it.
That's how we did it. But anyway, back to the question. So when I went back for the second try, I got it because this time birth certificate clearly indicated that I was older than 18, and I got the job. I was excited. I went back, but still family did not know that I got the job and I was going to be an interpreter, except one of my brother, because he was already working for the U.S. military. He knew, and he kind of supported me.
Yeah.
But behind the closed doors, because he couldn't tell anybody.
Of course.
I got the job, and I ended up going back to the same province where I was born. I was really excited to go back.
What province?
Not exactly where I was born, like the town, but kind of closer.
Okay. Is it what province was that? Did you go back to?
I went back to Kunar province.
Kunar,
So
okay.
I was at Combat Outpost Monty, a remote base deep in the Hindu Kush Mountains, a home to the Medal of Honor, Dakota Meyer. I know that guy, and I was there when everything happened. So yeah.
My God.
That's such an interesting way to like leave and return home, though, right? It's like you're chased out of your home by extremists from your own country, but then you're brought back by the U.S. military, like we're supposed to be there. That's just like a really interesting like circle to bring you back into your home life.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna want to make it clear. I think it was the Mission Essential Personnel. I believe it was a civilian company.
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
It did not
MEP.
They did not really care.
Okay.
They just, I don't know. I mean, it could be, but yeah. So I totally agree with you. But I was happy. You know, I was a kid, to be honest. Like, I really wanted to go back where I was born.
Of course.
And the funny thing that I love to ride in this military Humvees. I did not.
Hey, bro, it's fun. It's all right. Nothing wrong
Especially
with
when you're 15.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you must feel like such a badass. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Like a lot of people ask me like how they feel about going out. It's like I loved it.
I loved it.
I was like so excited. I was so excited, like riding in those military vehicles. We're doing any air assault missions. You know, I've done more than 100. Like I was like whenever they would have told me like we're going out tomorrow, I said like
I want to stop the conversation real quick, and I want to kind of pick apart something that he just said. He did over 100 air assault missions. So for my listeners, what air assault is, could you just explain what an air assault mission is so they can understand what that means?
So we have done a lot of air missions. So we were picked up by the Chinook helicopters. We're picked up by Black Hawk helicopters, dropped up on certain locations for certain targets.
Yep.
And I have done more than hundreds of them.
So sometimes it's from rope, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's all these types of off of a rotary wing or a helicopter, and then they like go hit a house. So you were with some direct action teams.
We have done that. We have done one of those missions, and I did talk about it in my book.
Yeah.
Like you probably said, like, you talk about your books a lot, just because
You
we
should.
only have a very limited time here. I wish I could say everything.
No.
But yes, we have done one of those missions. There was an outpost run by the Taliban, Hegel Valley or Ningala. There was an outpost, and a few Lithuanian soldiers were killed. 18 Afghanistan army soldiers were taken hostages. So we were the first one to arrive. And when we got there, it was a firefighting, so we couldn't land, and we had to be dropped up the Black Hawks. And it was scary. And the
Yeah.
sooner we
Yeah.
Yeah,
landed,
that's scary.
we
Yeah.
went straight. It
That's
was
the
a
real thing,
farmland,
baby.
right?
I've never
It was
look. I've never done one of those type of missions before.
So I was like, it was a farmland, and they watered the farmland night before. So we did not know, because it was corn and it was wheat, like a different harvest. So the sooner we landed, we stuck in the mud, and our faces were all over. And so I landed upside down, just because there was a firefighting. The bullets were flying everywhere. So I kind of landed on my face, and the sooner I got up and looked at everyone. And everyone was like, there was mud on their faces and hair. It was a crazy day.
Man, that is just. So how long were you a combat interpreter for? So you started. So how many years total?
I was pretty much combat interpreter for my whole career.
The whole career.
I was at combat outpost mine. I mean, later, so what happened was they started to shut down those
Sure.
remote bases, and we kind of
But you
moved
must have
into
seen
more
so
like
many different American units come through over and over and over. So you met so many Americans.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good thing that I have so many military friends and buddies, and just because I work with tons of different military units.
I think that's important, though, because one of the things that we hear a lot right now is, oh, like, why should we still care about our Afghan military allies? Like, what did the interpreters really do? Like, you guys were sometimes in more combat situations than even like US service members. You guys were really literally in the mud. And so when we talk about like what the nature of your service was like, I mean, you were in combat. Like that's what you were doing. And you were so young, especially when you started. So like when people talk about what were the risks for the Afghan interpreters, it was life or death. And I just want to make sure that our listeners are really understanding that, like, when we say interpreters, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Interpreters put their life at risk, at a greater risk, and they were at front. I can give you I will talk about another air assault.
Sure.
A very famous. I mean, there were a few operations, and one of them was they call it Strong Eagle 3. It was in Ganjgal Valley, in Maravara Valley, along the Devon line, and it was a crazy place. So we went into this valley, and a crazy operations. And when we got there, we had our high value target. The gentleman that we were going after is the police chief for Kunar province right now. We call it Koziyar or Karize or Rahman.
I know who that is. Keep on going.
So we wanted to go after this guy, and that was the whole mission or the whole operation to either capture or kill him. That's what we wanted, because forward operating base Joyce, or like he was a big figure in Eastern Afghanistan, supporting the entire militancy there. So we went after him, and we were up in a mountaintop, and we finally identified his location. It was deep in the valley. It was one house, and he was there. We tracked him through his cell phone, and we wanted to. So there was a different options. There was one option that they wanted to drop a bomb on the house and get rid of him, but then there was a girl, a young girl, and two other women there. So that was like no, that's not an option. That's not what we wanted to.
Right.
I remember the people, the Colonel Pappas, he's a general right now, and Colonel Babel, he's a general right now. So we were there. I was at the Technical Operation Command Center. We're up in the mountain, and we had the Ranger team. We had different units there with people from supporting this whole operations from different part of the country. We had one team came down from Bagram, one team came from Logar, from Fab Shing. So they were there too, supporting the whole operations. We had the Afghan Special Operation Unit with us too.
Wow, so from all my listeners, like the military units that my brother's kind of rattling off here are some of the most elite units inside of like ANISOC commandos, Rangers, or direct action teams. Those are the type of units that they're just kill mission units. So I'm just kind of making sure that everybody picks up on that. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So you asked what interpreters were doing during Operation Freedom. So when we identified this guy, like I said, there was multiple options, and one of the options was to drop bomb on the house and get rid of him. But there was a little girl and 2 females there, so that was like, no, we're not doing that. And then they talk about Navy SEAL team to come out from Bagram, and they said so the Navy SEALs would go after him. But it was around 3 p.m. and the Navy SEALs wanted to conduct their operations during dark or during night. So, and then there was a possibility that this guy will sneak into Pakistan just because, the house was by the Durham line and kind of closer to Pakistani observation posts or military posts. So that didn't work just because we did not want to wait till the fall or till the night just because, he could have run away because, there was a huge operation going on. So then we decided to go after him. I think, the gentleman's name was Captain Bellick, and he said, like, I think I want to go after him. So we went after him. When we landed there, so we didn't land right by the house just because, we landed about a mile away and then walked down to the house. We did not let him know that we were coming after him. So I was in the middle, like there were probably, I would say like 20 soldiers, and I was in the middle. And we were just walking down to the house from the mountaintop because the house was deep in the valley. There was only one house. When we got closer to the house, it's because I heard everything during the briefing because we heard about bombings, we heard about suicide bets, we heard about everything else that this guy has it, or he had soldiers, he had suicide bombers around him, or, like his PSD or personal security detachment or guards are the suicide bombers. So everybody was scared. To be honest with you, I was scared.
I'd be scared out of my mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what you do.
I look, man. What you're talking about right now, I'm getting scared. So I mean, look, I'm at home right now. I've got my dog next to me. So
it's just that little
that
PTSD
sounds very scary to me.
So when we started walking down to the house, and then when we got closer to the house, they called me up, like said, John, you gotta come to the front. And when I got to the front, like probably less than 50 feet away from the house. Mm-hmm. So we stopped. I went to the front, and there was a gentleman, an older man in his 80s, sitting outside, but he couldn't see us because there were, the trees were the hollies and tons of trees, the pine trees. They couldn't see. It was so bushy, but we could see pretty much him and everybody else, not like everybody outside the house, but the people in the house. So we were yelling at him, and the gentleman could not hear us because he was an older gentleman and he got some hearing problem. So we were about to shoot him. Like soldiers were ready to shoot him just because we thought that he's ignoring that.
Yeah.
Right.
We did not know that he got hearing problem. And what I did was like somehow came to my mind to throw rocks at him to see if he looked at us. I picked up a rock.
Smart.
I threw it at him. And then he looked around, he kind of scared and looked around like, what's going on? And then when he saw us, he was terrified because we were soldiers from nowhere. Like we were soldiers prepared from nowhere, and he did not know. And I asked him to come over because he was sitting outside. He was an older gentleman. I knew that he wasn't like, I couldn't tell for sure that he was a bad guy, but he was old. He could hardly walk.
Right.
So, but I couldn't touch him, like, so when we got closer to him, I ended up talking to him, and I said, we're going to go into the house, and would appreciate if, you just sit here, and this, we explained everything to him. So when we got closer to the house, to provide the security for the whole perimeter, one female came out of the house, and the sooner she saw me, she started yelling at me and says like, hey, brother, there is a wounded guy in the house, and there are a few other guys in the house that I do not know them. They came into the house probably like 2 hours ago, and they're wounded and they have weapons, and that was the word that I was like, I interpreted right away. And then when I saw that, it's like, everybody back up, back up, back up. So we had to back up. And it took us like about like half an hour to finally get into the house and got what we wanted. But the guy that we're looking for, he was gone. But we captured other folks, and there were other people that they were, you know.
I want to kind of just for some of my listeners to just kind of, you know, maybe put a little bit of thought on this whole story here. I'm just really in awe of it, because what you did is very, very difficult to do, and there is levels of being a combat interpreter. As somebody who grew up using combat interpreters, an interpreter who you can take on that type of mission and who has the ability to look at situations and de-escalate them, and so you can still capture your objectives without using kinetic force at times. This is why combat interpreters are always force multipliers for any unit, especially in Afghanistan, when the culture, the language, everything is different than America. I mean, it's almost polar opposite on certain things. So it's just incredible. Kate?
Yeah, I have a question. I want to know, I keep thinking about that old man who probably thought that like a kid was throwing rocks at him and like turning around and seeing just like all of these US military people. That was probably terrifying. And I'm wondering, how did other Afghans respond when they found out that you were a combat interpreter?
I mean, you mean the normal Afghans, or?
Yeah, like is it something that you hid from people?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I had to hide everything. I had to hide my identity. You know, like when I started working at the very beginning, I was told by other interpreters who had been there longer. It's just like, you know, you gotta use a Fiska, or you know, like make sure that you don't tell people where you live, because you never know what everyone was up to, and you couldn't trust everybody. Because they all look the same. You know, I mean, the Taliban or other militants or other insurgents, they all look the same, and you couldn't tell if they were the Taliban. All the interpreters, you know, like, you know, one of their jobs was not just like interpreting, but they were also interpreting the situation, telling their American units, like, you know, what was going to happen. And I've done this so many times.
Yeah, man.
Whether I was listening to ICOM chatters, you know, or I was there watching people leaving or doing certain things, and I knew I could interpret the whole situations, and I knew what was coming. So yeah, for our identity, I decided to do my best to hide my identity, just because it wasn't about me; it was about my family, and I've done everything I could, but I think I haven't done enough to keep my family safe, just because I lost family members. The insurgents went after him, and they brutally killed, and they shot my family members. And so
I ask because we get a lot of questions about like, why did we put such an emphasis on bringing the interpreters over? And what I'm trying to like explain to people is that you were at grave risk even when you had the US military like right by your side, right? Like you still were at such a great risk at that moment that you had to hide your identity from even some of like your closest loved ones. So then I want people to understand, like, what do you think happened to those interpreters once the Taliban did take over? Do you think that they are somehow safer? Like when we say that your life, like you guys were being hunted, like interpreters were being hunted, we genuinely mean that. And I just wanted listeners to have an opportunity to sort of hear from you that like, it was work that it sounds like you were proud of, but also that you did have to hide just for not only your own life, but the people you loved.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, the interpreters were at risk, and their families were at risk, and I wouldn't care about myself. And that's exactly like, you know, when I started working and then doing those crazy operations or being part of those crazy missions and daily patrols. I don't really care about myself, about my life, but I care more about my family, just because, you know, they had nothing to do with what I was doing. And interpreters are and were and they're still at risk, and there's so many are being left behind, just because, you know, like, this is the thing about interpreters. the interpreters were not only called traitors, they were called infidels,
Yep.
not Muslims, just because they were supporting non-Muslims, or the word that they used, infidel or kafir. And that became their ideological war against interpreters. We were just, so they were saying, they were saying, I've received ICOM chatter says, let's get rid of the interpreter because we were considered eyes and ears of the American soldiers. You know why? Because we could see, we could listen, we could hear. Says, let's get rid of the interpreters,
Always.
and then we will take care of them. So interpreters have done a tremendous jobs for during the war.
Yeah, they are some of my heroes.
We have service members who are alive because of their interpreters. I think that you would say that.
Oh, absolutely. My interpreter saved my life multiple times. I have people have to understand, first off, like how many different ethnicities there are, tribes there are, languages. So you're talking Dari, you're talking Pashto mostly, but then you get into some certain places, well, they got maybe a little Pashtun or something like that, or some languages that are very, very not that spoken. And so they not only save people's lives, they help the mission go forward. And they're just some of the most heroic people, because unlike us, I got to leave after a year and go home, check out, have fun with everybody. Not these guys. They had to stay there, and they had to be careful because the Taliban's intelligence arm has always been pretty good. They're pretty good. And what they're very good at is assassinations. And it's one of the things that they focused on all throughout my time there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I totally agree with him. And it's not like they were very good just because they have, I'm sure they have some financial support. And one of the reasons that they were very good is because they have tons of sympathizers everywhere. Yes. And it become ideological war for them, just because they were telling people, you help us just because we're fighting for Islam or we're doing jihad. And there were sympathizers, there were mullahs, there were preachers, there were people like, look nice to you, or like, they're very good people, but you didn't know that what they were up to. And that's why, like, they had good intelligence, or because they had tons of sympathizers, and there were people who were supporting them just because they believed that, they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, behind every effective American officer that ever served in Afghanistan, I guarantee you there's a cadre of interpreters there supporting every time he goes outside the wire. I had interpreters, and like before I would go into any engagement, they would know exactly what I was going to talk about, the points that I needed to express, and they would tell me, like, these are the things that you should say. These are the things maybe you shouldn't say. And afterwards we have the meeting, then they would tell me, what did you see? What happened? Because this is what I understand. And then they come in and they can say, did you notice how all these people were sitting? Who was talking? Which tribe they were on? It is a very difficult job because you're trying to explain to an American something that they've never seen before. And that is a Herculean task. So, yeah.
Knowing how dangerous it was and like going into these situations, did you ever have one moment where you were like, I do not want to do this anymore. I regret that I am doing this and I am out. Like, did you ever have a moment where you were like, oh God, what have I done?
Great question.
Actually, that's a great question. Probably more than one, but it was too late.
Yeah.
You're in it now.
Son of a bitch. Yep.
I don't regret anything just because it was way too late. Probably just, emotionally when I heard that my family members were brutally killed, or my brother was hit by a bomb, my two brothers and my sister was shot. I mean, I somehow feel guilty about everything that happened to my family. That probably the moment, but it was too late. I mean, there was nothing else I could do about it. It was like, I'm already there, and I was happy what I was doing. And every single soldier that I served with became my brother, and I still call them brothers. So like
of course,
I tell everybody that the brotherhood in the military is one of the strongest things that I can ever imagine. Like it's.
Yep. I mean, there's friendships, and then there's those that have born through fire. And if you I have no guys I haven't seen in probably 10 years, but if I saw them, it would be like yesterday. some of the guys that I served with on some of the most remote outposts. There's a brotherhood in war that carries on with your interpreter because he shared that with you. He has been in some of the worst situations. I mean, I have one of my interpreters who lost both of his legs, Richie. He was Richie. Yeah, he was on, I think, a second or third episode. And these men and women, they sacrifice greatly for the United States, and every single one of them deserves to be here that served with American forces because they saved our lives. 2,000 American soldiers were killed, and every single one of those is a heartache. But that number would have been infinitely higher without our combat interpreters. Infinitely higher. They just saved our lives, and because they saved their operations. And what you heard today is him explaining that to you. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to talk about my books anymore because
please
talk about your books.
If the folks read the reviews from different folks in the military, I got reviews from command sergeant majors, colonels, and majors in different ranks, and they will they will learn and they will read that a lot of those folks admit that interpreters saved thousands and thousands of lives. During the war.
Yeah, you can go to you should go to my brother's website, all right? combatinterpreter.com. You'll get all the information that you want and all the
and we'll link to it.
Yeah,
with
we'll
the
link to it in the show
for everyone.
We'll link to he's written how many books now? I mean
3?
Yeah. If you can't smell it, it's jealousy. It's a stinky cologne that I wear right now. Okay, so I mean 3
I can't wait.
I write a lot.
Actually, I can't wait to read your book.
Oh, God bless you.
Because I love your writing, man. It's just crazy.
Thank you. God bless you.
Yeah, and it's funny and it's good and like, oh my gosh, I wish I could write like that.
Oh God.
No, I have to say one of the things that we prioritize at our company is how do we elevate Afghan voices? And it has been such a joy to read some of the stories, and not because they're, some of them are really painful and really sad and hard, but it has been such a gift to see so many Afghans feel like they have a space where they can share their story. So please, everybody, read the books. They're really worthwhile. Afghan voices are the ones that you should be listening to. Definitely not me or Will.
Yeah. I mean, he wrote the books. Let's see. Get the Terp Up Here, an intimate view of the war as seen through the eyes of an interpreter to U.S. forces in Afghanistan. That was your first book, right?
That was my first book, yeah.
And then you wrote Indispensable, Tale of a Military Interpreter. Is that right?
Yes.
And then lastly, do you have one more?
Yeah, I have one more. It's soon to be published.
Oh, what is it? Tell us about it.
It's called 1,000 Miles to Freedom. An Afghan girl's journey from Afghanistan to Europe. It's an incredible story. She's the one who was shot multiple times and underwent multiple surgeries. Somehow she survived. It was a miracle. So it is her story, and I cannot wait to get it out. I'm more excited about this than my 2 other books.
Wow.
What's the book writing process like for you? Like, I know for Will, we talk about healing loudly, and that's one of the ways we do it is like through our writing. Was it hard for you, or was it sort of cathartic? Like, what was that process like?
That is a good word. That's a good term. I mean, healing loudly. At the beginning, I did not understand, but later I learned that that's exactly what it has been. And I wasn't like, I never thought I would ever write a paragraph because, I was not there. But I had some incredible team of veterans and some incredible people that I work with. And they have done everything for me. I was, started to write. I started off with a small story, sent it to a bunch of veterans, and they looked at it, fixed it, sent it back to me, and they said, like, write another one. And they were the ones like, did you finish the second story? We can't wait to hear it. So I wanted to send the second and third. So that's how I ended up writing 2 books and then the third one. So it is a great healing process. It helps a lot to get it out. It kind of ease the weight in your chest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand like why you have so many books. I mean, you have so many stories. I mean, we're just touching on like, a brief amount here. I mean, What was the story of you coming to the United States? Maybe if you could kind of share that with some of our listeners, that'd be great.
It was a dream.
Yeah.
I could not believe that it was happening. I waited for visa for about 7 years. For about 7 years. I have done everything I could. I got all the paperwork. I received letters from generals, from like different ranks, from second lieutenant all the way to generals. And then I was still waiting. And whenever I would reach out to State Department and ask about the status, or any update, it says, well, it's under process. And then it had been under process for 7 years. And finally, there were some high-rank government officials got involved, and that was like matter of 3 or 4 days. I got an email when those guys got involved, and the chief of staff, General Danford, I shouldn't have said his name, but I think I will, because
That's
he
okay.
literally saved my life, along with other my military buddies that I had the honor of working with. Bing West,
Yep. Being West.
Assistant Secretary under the Reagan administration,
Yes.
he got involved, and I got an email one day saying that you needed to get ready. And I was like, what? I said, like, yeah, I will get an email or a call from the embassy in a few days, and you needed to leave that country. And I was
What
like,
year was
are you
that,
kidding?
brother?
That was 2016.
Okay.
Okay.
So I started working back in 2008
Wow.
until 2016.
That's a long
And
time, man. That's a long time.
yeah, and I have applied for a special immigrant visa back in. I started right after in 2009, doing all sort of paperwork. One time a package got lost, then I had to redo it, and then I have applied for what they call a cheap admission approval in 2011, and then it was finally approved in 2016. So
Yeah, well, what my brother is talking about is the infamous special immigrant visa that the United States government gives to a lot of combat interpreters, but it's also for anybody else who works for the U.S. government or contractors can get a special immigrant visa. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be. I'll just say that.
I hate
absolutely.
it.
I hate
it so. I hate the
See, I
SIV
tried to
process.
be diplomatic. I just want.
Nope.
I tried to be diplomatic. Will Selber,
No, I mean,
the diplomat.
I totally agree with him. It has been, it has been much better, and I don't know what would happen after November. I mean, finger crossed. I've been praying, but if we go with the elephant, I mean, it's gonna be
Hey, that's a real
crazy.
concern for people.
And
Yeah,
it's a fair concern because the whole thing about SIV is that it was supposed to create this like automatic, really simple pathway for people who are at risk because they served with the United States military to come to a place of safety. And instead what's happening is that they're waiting 7 or 8 years and they're still having to serve as the combat interpreter and their life is still at risk. And like, I do recognize that we have made some strides in making the process easier, but we have also limited the number of SIVs that people have access to. So when we think about the number of people who are at risk because of their work with the military, how many people are going to get an SIV and actually get on that pathway to safety? I mean, there's a huge disparity. So that's what I was talking about. And we are definitely hearing from a lot of our Afghan allies who are really worried about what's going to happen in November because the SIV process is like really beholden to whatever administration is in charge and how they choose to implement it. That's the tricky thing. And so I think that like, it's very fair that people are frustrated and worried about what's going to happen with SIVs even in the future.
yeah. I mean, I'm worried about it too.
Yeah.
One of my brothers, he also worked for the Americans. He submitted his SIV months ago, and he's still waiting. His supervisor was contacted by the State Department, and everything has been completed, but it's still under process. I don't understand. Like, he
course.
doesn't understand. We don't understand why, if everything has been completed, why is he waiting in a danger? But he hasn't been provided with any good excuse. It's under process for what? Because his supervisor has been contacted and it's been confirmed that everything. But why is he waiting? So
Yeah, it is like being stuck at the worst DMV for eternity, and you're just sitting there.
Where they'll shoot you.
Yeah, it's just like sitting there, and you're just like, and you're like, is it time yet? They're like, no, sit down. And you're like, and then while this is happening, people are trying to kill you. So it's totally fine.
What DMV have you been going to,
well,
brother?
I mean, it is just like the level of bureaucratic hell that these our brothers and sisters go through to get here. It is just, I tell you what, I have helped so many. I have helped Afghans save themselves, and it is, for me, it makes me want to pick up my computer and throw it through a window. I get
Fair.
violently frustrated when I deal with like the United States immigration laws. And so I totally understand like the frustration. I mean, I'm frustrated by it because there are so many, not just interpreters, but like commandos, chiefs of police, human rights attorneys, female activists who believed. They believed in what we were selling in Afghanistan. And I know that because I used to sell it and I was really good at selling it. And it is that's a horrible thing about it, about what happened.
How did it feel once you actually got to the United States? Like, what was your resettlement process like? Because I think a lot of people think, well, once you're here in the US, things are really easy for you, right? Like you're safe and you don't have to worry about the same things. And what I have seen is that Afghans who are trying to resettle here, it is a struggle. Like it's a struggle to get benefits. It's a struggle to learn the language and the culture. You're usually not here with your family. Like, what was that like?
And that is a wonderful question. So it has. So I will answer it in two different ways.
Okay.
One, through my own journey, and the second, as a case manager working for a resettlement agency right now.
Of course, you are.
I'm dealing with families and single individuals from all over the world.
I'm so glad you're doing that work, though.
Yeah.
You're the kind of person who needs to be in that job because when people are coming to you in crisis, I feel like your heart can understand it. I'm so encouraged that you're in that field.
Yeah, it just, I love my job. And one of the reasons that I love my job is to share my own experience with folks coming to this country.
Ugh.
And I totally agree with you that life is not easy. Well, we can make it easy, but it is a struggle at the very beginning, and it's a very traumatic journey for anyone who comes to this country, just because it's totally different lifestyle here. Like you mentioned, you don't understand the culture, you don't speak the language. Even if you speak the language, you still, still will be going through the phases.
You're not a native speaker. I mean, there's just a difference in slang and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of hard to integrate into the community. It takes time, and the life is totally like for folks coming from Afghanistan. It's for it's not for Afghans, for everybody.
Sure,
they're coming from Afghanistan, and they're smart people. Some of them ended up going to universities, but the system is totally different. So then you have to redo it all over again. You got to go back to school, and you have to, like whatever you have, it's not like work right away for you. It takes time. And so it is a struggle for folks coming here. For example, like a lot of, they're not, the work, the work organizations, the workforce is totally different. A lot of folks struggle to find jobs for themselves. Some folks have the mindset that they had different jobs in Afghanistan and they don't want to work at the restaurant, or they don't want to work at a gas station, or they don't want to work at McDonald's or any other places. So life is hard. It was hard for me, even though I could speak very good English. I ended up working at a construction company, and then that was my very first job. And then I started working at a tree company, cutting trees and pruning trees and that kind of job. Both were top jobs. And then my third job was I was working at convenience store. But I never shy away and says like, oh, I don't want to do this, or just because I could speak English, or, I had to have a better job. But at the same time, I was focusing going to school. So it is a struggle. And I would say that, it's a beautiful country. It's a land of opportunity. Uh, but if you use your time and if you focus what you want, um, you have all the freedom. You can say you can do whatever you want to do in this country. And just keep in mind that every journey at the very beginning is hard. It will
Yeah.
get easier over time, but nothing will happen overnight. I see a lot of folks get disappointed right away, like, oh,
Mhm.
we don't like it here, and life is hard. And I I agree, but it will get easier over time, and it won't happen just like overnight. It will take a little bit of time. So life is hard. It
Yeah, it
was hard.
is. It is. You know, brother, I am blessed to have in my life just so many Afghan brothers and sisters. They just enrich my life because I get to go hang out with them. And let me tell you something. Hanging out with refugees and immigrants is the best part of my life. Like other than hanging out with my daughter and my wife, like when I get to go hang and Kate K and talking to her.
That was
I mean,
risky.
I just thought
That
that
was
was a given,
I was
Kate.
looking
I
at you
saw
like,
that. I saw that face. Did you see that? She was like, "Hey, hey, hey." Okay, Kate K is always in there. It's just implied. But like hanging out with my Afghan brothers and sisters, I had just everywhere I go. There's some of them that are here, and I am like they inspire me to work hard because they are just some of the hardest working people I've ever seen. You know, I'm blessed to have Lieutenant General Hibatullah Alizai as my friend. This is the former chief of general staff. You know,
I met him.
yeah,
I
he's a
was in,
great guy.
yeah, he's a
Lovely.
good guy.
He
Yeah.
drives an Uber for a living right now. You know what? Who cares? Because he is grinding to support his family. And you know what? That's the role model, right? Like saving and earning, and like he tells me often, he's like, you know, it's about the second generation of Afghans who are here
Mhm.
now. You know what? You know the young ones like yourself are going to be able to do in this country, and it's just immigrants and refugees, not just Afghans. They're just some of the most inspirational people. I love it.
It is hard though. Like it breaks my heart when I listen to some of the people who are here now. And what I hear so often is, I just want to work or I just want to go to school. And I think that's like, it's such a fair human thing, especially because like that's one of those things that will make you feel like your life here has value or meaning to it. And I absolutely understand how difficult it must be, even for you coming to this country. Like you were a combat interpreter. You were in these really high risk situations where large amounts of people put their lives in your hands. And then you're coming here and you're going into construction. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I
Mhm.
also understand the frustration that it's not what you envisioned for yourself and that having access to the things that add value, it shouldn't be so hard.
No, I mean, I appreciate every job, and I always looked at it
Of
that
course.
every single job is respectable and honorable. I was doing construction work, and the weekend I was working at a restaurant washing dishes. I never said I don't want to do this,
Yep.
and I'm still like open to any job opportunities out there. Like I work for a settlement agency here, but at the same time, if I have other job opportunity, and it doesn't have to be like in the office, or it doesn't have to be for any big organization or any
Mhm.
governmental entities. I'm open to any job, and this is what, like, this is the beauty of this country, that, and if you wanted to build your life, you have to be open to any job opportunity there, and don't even think like you were in this position in your country, and now like you wanted the same thing. I mean, for some, you can, for some folks, probably easy to find that kind of works here, but for a lot, it's just not like, that's not the same. It's just totally different.
Yep. I have one more question, if that's okay. I'm sorry. You're so interesting. And I'm curious what the last few years have felt like for you, because you weren't one of those Afghans who was in country in August 2021. You were having to watch it on your TV and then watch what
Yeah,
has happened over the last 3 years. And as somebody who sacrificed so much for
great
us,
question.
I'm interested what the last few years have felt like for you.
Ken, is a good question. Quite honestly, it has been traumatic. It has been heartbroken, and it's not like, because I'm still in contact with a lot of folks that I work with, and they're all interpreters, but they're left behind in the mercy of the Taliban right now, and it's heartbreaking to get text messages or WhatsApp messages from them, and saying that, I cannot leave my house, or this happens, or the Taliban came to my house, or, I heard that they were looking for me, and I don't know if I can survive until tomorrow, or I can, um, it has been very traumatic, and it just keep going, just because I know a lot of people that I work with that were interpreters, and they're still left behind. And I like August 2021 is an unforgettable day for all Afghans, and we'll never forget it. And it has been hard. It has been hard, and it was just not the 2021. It's been going, just because you have friends or loved ones, and they're left behind, and you never know what would happen to them tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering my questions so honestly. I know that they're hard, and I hope that they didn't cause like any harm on your end. I ask because I want people to understand that when Will and I are out there saying that Afghans were betrayed, it's because you actually were, and you felt betrayed, and like you continue to feel that years and years later. Like we want people to be able to understand sort of the depth of that. So thank you very, very much for, I think, giving people a better understanding of what that experience was like.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. The Afghans have been greatly betrayed, and this betrayal is unforgettable for Afghans.
And just to wrap up here, I just want to say one thing though. Here's the thing. When we talk about the Afghans that are here, and they almost all of them that I've talked to feel betrayed, and I feel betrayed. Oh my God, do I feel betrayed? But you know what? I have never met one, at least, that has been like, I don't love being here. I'm grateful to be here, but this is what the follow-on sentence always is. But this isn't my home, and I always wanted to be able to go home and see people. And that's the real betrayal, because we took away their homes, and now they're left behind enemy lines. And people need to really think about it like that. And that's why I say it. We left people behind, and it's just not combat interpreters. It's a whole host of people who are now trying to survive under a brutal gender apartheid regime who does unspeakable things to women, and has now passed an edict, whatever the right terminology is, that bars females from speaking in public. We're recording this in late August. And so I just want everybody to realize that when we talk about the betrayal, it is widespread. It is through all different parts. But these men and women sacrificed for American forces, and they earned their place among us. And so I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful to my brother for coming on. Thank you. It was a wonderful conversation. Kate, you were amazing as always. And thanks for joining us and offering our guests a place to heal loudly. We will see you next time.